Deep in the Colorado Rockies, where cell towers can't reach and rescue helicopters rarely fly, Sarah Chen and her hiking team stumbled upon something that defied everything they thought they knew about survival. Inside what appeared to be an abandoned bear den, they found 16-year-old Marcus, not starving or desperate, but thriving in ways that seemed impossible. The cave wasn't just shelter, it was a technological marvel. Solar panels disguised as rocks-powered LED grow lights nurturing an underground garden. A water purification system built from scavenged electronics provided crystal-clear drinking water. Most shocking of all, Marcus had constructed a communication device that could reach satellites using nothing but spare parts and brilliance beyond his years. But Marcus wasn't just some runaway kid playing wilderness games. He was hiding from something, or someone, and the advanced technology suggested he possessed knowledge that others would kill for. His hands shook as he pleaded with the hikers, "You have to leave. They track everyone who finds me." What had this mountain boy discovered, and why were powerful people hunting a teenager in the middle of nowhere? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs as she stared at the boy. 3 days into what was supposed to be a routine wilderness photography expedition, she'd expected wildlife encounters, maybe a distant bear or curious mountain goats. Not this, not a teenager with sun-bleached hair and intelligent green eyes warning them about mysterious pursuers in the middle of the Colorado wilderness. "Kid, slow down," called Jake Martinez, her expedition partner for the past 5 years. The former military man approached with his hands visible, the way you might approach a spooked animal. "Nobody's tracking anybody, we're just hikers." Marcus backed deeper into his cave, and Sarah caught a better glimpse of the impossible setup behind him. The underground chamber stretched further than any natural bear den should, carved and expanded by hand. Shelves lined the walls, filled with electronic components she couldn't identify. A workbench dominated one corner, scattered with tools that looked handmade but precisely crafted. The soft hum of machinery filled the air. "You don't understand," Marcus said, his voice cracking. "The moment you found this place, they know. They always know." He frantically began stuffing items into a worn backpack. "I have to move again. I thought I had more time here." Sarah's photographer instincts kicked in. This wasn't just an interesting human story, this was something unprecedented. She'd documented remote communities across 6 continents, but nothing like this. The technology surrounding them appeared years ahead of anything she'd seen in major cities, yet built from what looked like electronic waste. "Marcus," she said gently, remembering how he'd introduced himself when they first called out to the cave. "How long have you been up here?" 2 years, 4 months, 16 days. The precision of his answer chilled her. Since the night they killed Dr. Morrison. Jake and Sarah exchanged glances. Sarah's third team member, Tom Bradley, remained near the cave entrance, supposedly keeping watch, but clearly overwhelmed by the situation. "Who killed Dr. Morrison?" Jake asked. Marcus stopped packing and stared at them with an expression far too old for his face. "You really don't know, do you? You just happened to find me." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Morrison was my guardian, brilliant scientist. He figured out how to create sustainable fusion reactions using principles everyone said were impossible. Cold fusion, but actually workable." Sarah felt her breath catch. Even she knew enough about energy science to understand the implications. Workable fusion technology would revolutionize everything. Power, transportation, entire economies. "The government came for his research," Marcus continued, "except it wasn't really the government. Private contractors, corporate interests. Morrison hid his work, scattered it across multiple locations. But I was there that night. I saw them. His hands resumed their frantic packing. They shot him and tore apart his lab looking for the core equations. They never found them. "Because you have them," Jake said. It wasn't a question. Marcus's silence was answer enough. "The technology here," Sarah said, gesturing around the cave, You built this using his research? Morrison taught me everything. Physics, engineering, how to think beyond conventional limitations. Marcus shouldered his pack, but mostly he taught me how to hide, how to stay invisible. Until now, a distant sound echoed from outside, the rhythmic thump of helicopter rotors approaching fast. Marcus's face went white. No, not already. He grabbed Sarah's arm. Listen carefully. Everything you've seen here, forget it. Tell no one. If they think you know something, you'll disappear like the others. Others? Tom called from the entrance, his voice tight with fear. The helicopter sound grew louder. Morrison wasn't the first scientist they've silenced, Marcus said, heading toward what looked like a solid rock wall but must have been another exit. And if they catch me, I won't be the last. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire, broken only by the soft hiss of the dying campfire and Marcus's labored breathing. Sarah found herself studying the boy's face in the flickering light, sharp cheekbones that spoke of lean times, eyes that held far too much knowledge for someone barely old enough to drive, and hands that trembled despite his obvious efforts to appear calm. "Who's coming back?" Jake asked again, his voice gentler this time. He'd shifted position, no longer blocking the cave entrance but still ready to move if needed. Marcus glanced between them, his internal struggle playing out across his features. Finally, he seemed to reach a decision. "They think I'm dead," he whispered. "It needs to stay that way." Sarah exchanged a look with Jake. Whatever they'd stumbled into was far more complex than a simple case of a runaway teen. "Marcus," she said carefully, "we're not here to hurt you or turn you into anyone. But if you're in danger—" "You don't understand." Marcus stood abruptly, pacing to the back wall of the cave. "They killed my parents. They destroyed our lab. They would have killed me too if I hadn't—" He stopped, pressing his palms against the stone wall. "If you hadn't—" "What?" Jake prompted. Instead of answering, Marcus pressed his hand against what appeared to be a natural depression in the rock. Sarah heard a soft click, followed by a low humming sound that seemed to come from the earth itself. A section of the cave wall swung inward on silent hinges, revealing a passage lit by a soft blue-white glow. "Jesus," Jake breathed. Marcus turned back to them, his expression resigned. "If I show you this, there's no going back. You'll be part of it whether you want to be or not." Sarah's mind raced. Every instinct told her to grab Jake and leave immediately, to report their location to the authorities and let trained professionals handle whatever this was. But the desperate hope in Marcus's eyes, the exhaustion that seemed bone-deep, the careful way he moved as if his body carried invisible wounds, all of it spoke to something deeper than teenage rebellion or even mental illness. "Show us," she heard herself say. The passage beyond the hidden door descended at a gentle angle, the walls smooth and clearly artificial despite their natural appearance. The mysterious blue light emanated from strips embedded in the ceiling, providing illumination without any visible power source. After perhaps 50 feet, the passage opened into a cavern that defied every assumption Sarah had made about their situation. The space was enormous, easily the size of a high school gymnasium, with a ceiling that disappeared into shadows above. But it was what filled the cavern that made her knees weak. Workbenches lined the walls, covered with devices that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie. Screens displayed scrolling data in languages she didn't recognize. In the center of the space, a complex apparatus hummed quietly, its crystalline components pulsing with the same blue light that illuminated the passage. "How is this possible?" Jake's voice was barely audible. "My parents were theoretical physicists," Marcus said, moving between the workbenches with practiced familiarity. "They discovered something, a way to manipulate quantum field structures to create localized space-time distortions. Basically, this cavern exists in a pocket dimension. It's bigger inside than the mountain should allow." Sarah tried to process what she was seeing, what he was telling them. "That's impossible. 6 months ago, I would have agreed with you." Marcus picked up a device that looked like a cross between a tablet and a kaleidoscope. The screen immediately came to life, displaying what appeared to be real-time satellite imagery. But my parents proved it's not only possible, it's practical. Too practical. The people who killed your parents, Jake said, understanding dawning in his voice. They wanted this technology. Gentech Industries. They made an offer to buy my parents' research. When my parents refused to sell, especially the military applications, Marcus's hand tightened on the device. They made it look like a gas leak explosion. Our entire neighborhood was evacuated. In the confusion, I managed to escape through an emergency tunnel my father had built. Sarah sank onto a nearby stool, overwhelmed. How long have you been here? 4 months. I've been continuing their work, trying to understand everything they discovered, but I'm running out of time. Marcus gestured to another screen showing what looked like search patterns overlaid on a topographical map. Gentech knows the research wasn't destroyed in the fire. They have teams searching, getting closer. And there's something else. He manipulated the kaleidoscope device, and the screen shifted to display a series of energy readings. The quantum field manipulation creates detectable signatures. The more I use the technology, the easier it becomes to track. But I need to use it to complete my parents' work. What work? Sarah asked, though part of her dreaded the answer. Marcus met her eyes, and she saw determination burning there alongside the fear. They were close to a breakthrough that would make clean energy freely available to everyone. No more wars over oil, no more pollution, no more energy poverty. But the same principles could be weaponized in ways that would make nuclear bombs look like firecrackers. The weight of that revelation settled over them like a physical presence. Outside their hidden sanctuary, the mountain wind continued its ancient song, but inside, 3 people sat surrounded by technology that could reshape human civilization or destroy it entirely. The rope ladder swayed beneath Marcus's boots as he descended into what should have been solid rock. Instead, his headlamp beam revealed smooth metal walls that curved away into darkness. The air grew warmer with each rung, carrying scents of copper and ozone that made his nose tingle. Jesus Christ, Sarah whispered above him, her voice echoing strangely in the space. Marcus, are you seeing this? He was seeing it, but his brain refused to process what lay before him. The cave's natural stone had been carved away to reveal a cylindrical chamber that stretched both deeper and wider than seemed possible. Embedded in the walls were panels of softly glowing blue light, pulsing in rhythmic patterns like a massive heartbeat. His feet touched solid ground, not cave floor but polished metal grating. Overhead, Sarah and David completed their descent, their combined headlamps revealing more impossible details. Corridors branched off in 3 directions, each lined with the same mysterious blue panels. The walls themselves appeared to be made of some kind of lightweight alloy that reflected their lights in prismatic rainbows. "Kid," Marcus called out, his voice carrying further than it should have in the space. "We're not here to hurt you. We just want to understand." Silence answered him, broken only by a low humming that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. David moved to one of the glowing panels, reaching out tentatively. "Don't touch anything," Sarah hissed, but David's finger was already making contact with the surface. The panel flared brighter, and suddenly the entire chamber filled with warm golden light. The humming grew louder, more complex, almost musical. Marcus realized he could see the full scope of the underground sanctuary now, and his knees nearly buckled. The space was enormous, easily the size of an aircraft hangar, carved impossibly deep into the mountain. Workbenches lined the walls, covered with devices that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie. Sleek computers with holographic displays, machines with crystalline components that caught and split the light into dancing fragments. In the center of it all stood something that made Marcus's engineering background revolt against what his eyes were showing him. It looked like an engine, but not like any engine he'd ever seen. Metallic spirals twisted around a central core that seemed to bend light around itself, creating a visual distortion that made him dizzy to look at directly. Thick cables snaked away from it, disappearing into the floor and walls. The musical humming was definitely coming from this device. "That's impossible," David breathed, approaching the central machine. "The power requirements alone. There's no way to run something like this off-grid, especially not up here." A soft scraping sound made them all freeze. The boy emerged from one of the side corridors, moving with careful, deliberate steps. In the better light, Marcus could see he was older than they'd first thought, maybe 17 or 18. His dark hair hung past his shoulders, and his clothes, while crude, showed careful construction. But it was his eyes that stopped Marcus cold. They held an intelligence that seemed far too old for his young face, along with a wariness that spoke of hard-learned lessons. "You shouldn't have come down here," the boy said quietly. His voice carried a slight accent that Marcus couldn't place. "They have satellites. They watch for electromagnetic signatures." "Who watches?" Sarah asked, taking a careful step forward. "Who are they?" The boy's gaze flicked to the central machine, then back to them. "The people who killed my father, who destroyed our lab, who've been hunting me for 3 years. Marcus felt his heart rate spike. "Son, if you're in danger, we can help. We can call the authorities." The boy's composure cracked for the first time, raw terror flashing across his features. "You don't understand. They are the authorities. Government, military, corporations. It doesn't matter. They all want what we created." He gestured to the machine behind him, and Marcus noticed the boy's hands were scarred, crisscrossed with old burns and cuts. "My father called it the resonance engine. It taps into quantum fluctuations in space-time itself. Clean, unlimited energy. No fuel, no waste, no environmental impact." David let out a low whistle. That would change everything. End the energy crisis, stop climate change, and destroy entire industries worth trillions of dollars," the boy finished grimly. "Which is why they killed him when he tried to publish our research. Why they burned our lab and made it look like an accident. Why I've been running ever since." The golden light suddenly shifted to red, and a new sound joined the humming, a rhythmic beeping that made the boy's face go pale. "No, no, no," he whispered, rushing to one of the computer terminals. His fingers flew over controls that looked like nothing Marcus had ever seen. "You triggered the proximity sensors when you touched the panel. They'll detect the signature change." The beeping grew faster, more urgent. "How long do we have?" Marcus asked, military instincts kicking in despite his confusion. The boy looked up from the terminal, and Marcus saw something in his expression that chilled him to the bone. "If I'm right about their response time, maybe 6 hours before they're airborne, 8 before they reach us." Sarah's headlamp beam swept across the cavern wall, illuminating rows of mechanical drawings etched directly into the stone. The precision was unsettling, each line carved with mathematical accuracy that spoke of obsessive attention to detail. Marcus moved beside her, his breathing shallow in the thin mountain air. "These aren't just sketches," he whispered, tracing a finger along what appeared to be a complex schematic for some kind of energy converter. "Look at the calculations." The boy, he told them his name was Kai, watched from the shadows near his makeshift workbench. His dark eyes never left their faces, cataloguing every reaction with the wariness of someone who'd learned to read people for survival. "You understand them," Kai said. It wasn't a question. His voice carried an odd mixture of hope and resignation. Marcus nodded slowly. His engineering background made the diagrams comprehensible, though their implications were staggering. "This design, it's theoretical. Scientists have been trying to crack this kind of efficiency for decades." "Not theoretical." Kai moved to a covered object in the corner and pulled away a tattered canvas tarp. Beneath it sat a device no larger than a car battery, its surface covered in an intricate network of copper wiring and crystalline components that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. "What does it do?" "Power." Kai's hand hovered over the device without touching it. "Clean power, enough to run a small town for months from ambient electromagnetic fields." The silence that followed was broken only by the distant sound of wind whistling through the cave entrance. Sarah exchanged a glance with Marcus, seeing her own disbelief reflected in his expression. "That's impossible," Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Show them the water purifier," came a new voice from deeper in the cave. Sarah spun around, her headlamp revealing another figure emerging from the shadows, a girl, maybe 16, with tangled blonde hair and clothes that had seen better days. She moved with a subtle limp, favoring her left leg. "Emma?" Kai's voice carried a warning tone. "We don't know if we can trust them yet." "We don't have a choice," Emma replied, stepping into the light. Her face was gaunt, but her eyes burned with fierce intelligence. "They've already seen too much. Either we trust them or—" She didn't finish the sentence, but her meaning was clear. Sarah raised her hands in a gesture of peace. "We're not here to hurt anyone. We're just hikers who got caught in the storm." "Hikers don't carry that kind of gear," Emma said, nodding toward Marcus's high-tech GPS unit clipped to his belt. "And they don't ask the kinds of questions you've been asking." Marcus stepped forward carefully. "You're right. I'm an engineer. Sarah's a geologist. We work for the National Park Service, documenting unusual geological formations. But what we've found here," he gestured at the workshop around them, "this has nothing to do with our official work." Kai studied them for a long moment, then made a decision. He led them to another corner of the cave where a series of metal containers sat beside what looked like a miniature laboratory setup. Clear tubes snaked between glass vessels, and the whole apparatus hummed with quiet efficiency. "Heavy metals, bacteria, chemical contaminants," Kai said, pouring a sample of murky liquid into one end of the system. "In 30 seconds, you'll have water purer than anything that comes out of a municipal treatment plant." True to his word, crystal-clear water began flowing from the output tube. Emma filled a metal cup and handed it to Sarah. "Try it." The water was clean, with no aftertaste or chemical residue. Sarah had spent enough time testing water samples in the field to recognize quality when she tasted it. "How long have you been up here?" she asked. 3 years, Emma answered when Kai remained silent. "Since the fire." "Fire?" Kai's face darkened. "The lab where we lived, where we worked. They said it was an accident, but we knew better. They wanted the research, not the researchers." "Who's they?" Marcus asked. "The people who funded Dr. Chen's work," Emma said. "They thought they owned everything we created. When Dr. Chen refused to weaponize the technology, the implication hung in the air like smoke. Sarah felt pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. "You were part of a research project, some kind of think tank." "A school," Kai corrected, "for gifted kids, outcasts, kids whose families couldn't handle what we could do." His voice grew bitter. "They told us we were special, that we were going to change the world." "You did change the world," Marcus said, gesturing at the inventions around them. "This technology could solve half the problems facing humanity." "That's what Dr. Chen thought too," Emma said quietly. "Right up until they killed her." The cave fell silent except for the steady drip of condensation somewhere in the darkness. Sarah realized they'd stumbled into something far more dangerous than a simple survival story. These weren't just lost kids. They were refugees carrying secrets that someone had already killed to obtain. The boy's fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced efficiency, but Sarah could see the tremor in his hands. Whatever he was accessing clearly terrified him. The main screen flickered, displaying what looked like satellite imagery, but the resolution was impossibly sharp, showing details that current technology shouldn't capture. "This is real time," Marcus whispered, leaning closer. "Better than real time," the boy replied, his voice barely audible. "It processes multiple data streams, infrared, electromagnetic, seismic vibrations. I can track individual heat signatures from orbit." He zoomed in on a section of mountainous terrain hundreds of miles away. "There." Sarah's breath caught. Tiny red dots moved in formation across the screen, too organized to be animals, too coordinated to be casual hikers. The timestamp showed they were moving at night, which made the behavior even more suspicious. "They've been searching grid by grid for 3 months, the boy continued, pulling up a time-lapse sequence. "Look at the pattern. The footage compressed weeks of movement into minutes. The red dots swept across vast areas of wilderness in methodical sweeps, gradually working their way toward their current location. "Who are they?" David asked. The boy's jaw tightened. "People who want what I can build. People who don't understand that some knowledge is too dangerous to exist." He switched to another screen, showing archived news reports. Dr. Elena Vasquez, quantum physicist, disappeared from her lab in Denver 6 months ago. Dr. James Chen, MIT robotics professor, vanished 3 months later. Both were working on projects similar to my early experiments. Sarah felt ice form in her stomach. "You think they were taken?" "I know they were." The boy pulled up more files, newspaper clippings, police reports, academic papers. The same week Dr. Vasquez disappeared, her lab servers were wiped clean. Professional job. Dr. Chen's research into advanced AI was confiscated by federal agents 2 days before he vanished, citing national security concerns. Marcus studied the evidence with the methodical attention he brought to mountain navigation. This organization, whoever they are, they're collecting people like you. People like me don't usually exist, the boy said grimly, but when we do, he gestured around the cave, we can build things that change everything. Unlimited clean energy, instant global communication, weapons that could level cities or shields that could protect them. The weight of his words settled over the group. Sarah found herself looking at the inventions around them with new eyes. She'd been amazed by their sophistication, but she hadn't fully grasped their implications. "The water purification system," she said slowly. "How much water could it process? Scaled up? Every drop of contaminated water on Earth could be clean within a year. The power cells could replace every fossil fuel plant on the planet. No emissions, no waste, no resource depletion." David whistled low. "Jesus, no wonder someone's hunting you." The boy's expression darkened. "The problem isn't just that they want the technology, it's what they do with it." He pulled up another screen, showing complex mathematical models. "I've run thousands of simulations. Every scenario where this level of technology gets controlled by a single organization ends badly. Wars over access, entire populations held hostage, technological feudalism." "So you hide," Marcus said. "Keep it secret." "I tried that." The boy's voice cracked slightly, and for a moment the brilliant young man disappeared, replaced by a scared kid, but they found traces anyway. "Enough to know I exist, even if they don't know where." Sarah noticed something on the edge of the screen, a new cluster of red dots, much closer than the others. "What's that?" The boy's face went white. He frantically switched between camera feeds, zooming in on the approaching signatures. No. They weren't supposed to be this close yet. The enhanced imaging revealed figures in dark tactical gear, moving with military precision through the forest below. Even from the satellite view, Sarah could see they carried advanced equipment, devices she didn't recognize, but that looked decidedly non-standard. "How long do we have?" Marcus asked, his survival instincts kicking in. The boy was already moving, his fingers flying across multiple keyboards simultaneously. Screens around the cave began showing evacuation protocols, automated systems engaging. 6 hours, maybe 8, if they don't have my exact location yet. "Can we outrun them?" "Not we. Me." The boy stopped typing and looked at them with desperate intensity. "This is where you leave. All of you. Pretend you never found this place." "Like hell," Sarah said immediately. "You're just a kid." "I'm a kid who built all this," he snapped, gesturing around the cave. "I can take care of myself, but I can't protect you and escape them at the same time." The satellite feed updated, showing the tactical team's steady advance. Their movement pattern suggested they weren't just searching randomly anymore. They were following a specific trail. "They're tracking something," David observed grimly. The boy nodded, his shoulders sagging with exhaustion. "Probably electromagnetic signatures from my equipment. I've shielded everything, but they have resources I can only guess at." He looked at each of them in turn. "Please, I'm begging you, take the trail down to Miller's Creek and don't look back." But Sarah was already shaking her head, and she could see the same determination in her companions' faces. They'd found something extraordinary, and they weren't about to abandon it, or him, to unknown hunters. The morning light filtered through the cave entrance as Marcus stirred from an uneasy sleep. He'd spent the night cataloguing everything he'd seen, trying to make sense of the impossible technology surrounding them. Sarah was already awake, quietly sketching in her notebook while David snored softly against his pack. Kai emerged from the deeper tunnels carrying what looked like a metallic tablet, its surface shimmering with data streams that moved like living mercury. The boy's eyes were rimmed with exhaustion, and Marcus noticed his hands trembling slightly as he worked. "You didn't sleep," Sarah observed, looking up from her sketches. "Can't sleep. They're getting closer." Kai's fingers danced across the tablet's surface, and suddenly the cave walls came alive with three-dimensional holographic displays. Topographical maps of the entire mountain range materialized in the air, dotted with pulsing red markers that seemed to be moving in coordinated patterns. David jerked awake at the sudden illumination. "What the hell?" "Search patterns," Kai interrupted, pointing to the advancing markers. 15 teams, maybe 20. They started at the base camps 3 days ago. Systematic grid search, moving up the mountain. His voice cracked with panic. They've never gotten this organized before. Marcus studied the holographic display, his military training kicking in. The search pattern was professional, methodical. Who are they exactly? Government? Military? Kai's laugh was bitter and hollow. Worse. They call themselves the Acquisition Division, private contractors who specialize in retrieving valuable assets. He manipulated the display, zooming in on one of the markers. The hologram resolved into the shape of heavily armed figures in tactical gear. "They want what's in my head." Sarah leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. "The knowledge isn't just learned, is it? It's something more." The boy's shoulders sagged in defeat. "My parents were researchers at the Blackwood Institute. Cognitive enhancement, memory transfer, neural mapping. They discovered something, a way to compress and implant vast amounts of technical knowledge directly into the human brain." He touched his temple with shaking fingers. "I was their first and only successful test subject." "Jesus," David breathed. "You're carrying what, decades of research in your head?" "Centuries," Kai corrected. "Knowledge from hundreds of scientists, engineers, inventors, everything from basic physics to theoretical applications that won't be discovered for generations. But the process," he winced, pressing his palms against his skull. "It's breaking my brain apart piece by piece. The human mind wasn't designed to hold this much information." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. "That's why you're here. Your parents were hiding you." "Were," Kai emphasized. "Past tense. The division found them 6 months ago. My parents destroyed their research rather than let it fall into the wrong hands, but I got away. I've been running ever since." The holographic display shifted, showing the search teams advancing steadily up the mountain slopes. "But they know I'm here. They always know, somehow." Sarah stood abruptly, her face pale. "We have to get you out of here." "Where?" Kai's voice was hollow. "They have resources you can't imagine, government connections, unlimited funding, technology almost as advanced as what I can create. There's nowhere to run, that they won't eventually find me." The cave suddenly filled with a low, pulsing alarm sound emanating from hidden speakers. Kai's face went white as he frantically manipulated the tablet. New markers appeared on the holographic display, much closer than the others. "Advanced Scout Team," he whispered. "They found the thermal vents. They'll be at the cave entrance within the hour." Marcus was already moving, his survival instincts taking over. "What do we need to save? What's absolutely essential?" "Nothing." Kai's response stunned them all. "Everything important is up here." He tapped his head again. "The workshop, the inventions, they're just applications of what I carry. Impressive toys, but not the real prize." "Then we run," David said, shouldering his pack. "We get off this mountain and figure out the rest later." Kai shook his head. "You don't understand. If they capture me, if they extract this knowledge..." The holographic display shifted to show technical schematics, weapons systems, surveillance technology, devices that could reshape the balance of global power. They won't use it to help humanity. They'll sell it to the highest bidder, no matter who that is. Sarah grabbed the boy's shoulders. Then we make sure they don't capture you. The alarm grew more urgent. Through the cave entrance, Marcus could hear the distant sound of helicopters approaching. The division wasn't just hiking up the mountain. They were coming from multiple directions. Kai looked at each of them in turn, something resolute hardening in his young features. There's another way. But you're not going to like it. What are you talking about? Marcus demanded. The boy's fingers moved across his tablet one final time, and deep within the cave, machinery began to hum with increasing intensity. The knowledge can be transferred, Kai said quietly. Split up, distributed, hidden where they'll never think to look. The morning sun cast long shadows across the clearing as Marcus tested the crude radio receiver Sam had cobbled together from components in his workshop. Static crackled through the speaker, punctuated by fragments of voices that faded in and out like ghosts on the wind. There, Sam pointed to a specific frequency. That's them. Elena leaned closer, straining to make out the words through the interference. The voices were clipped, professional, using terminology she didn't recognize. But one phrase came through crystal clear: asset recovery operation. How long have you been monitoring their communications? David asked, his weathered face grim. Since I was 8, Sam replied matter-of-factly. They change frequencies every few weeks, but I've learned their patterns. Marcus adjusted the dial, bringing another conversation into focus. This time, the words made Elena's blood run cold. Target located. Mountain range, 77 Alpha. Commence sweep pattern at dawn. That's today, she whispered. Sam was already moving, his small frame darting between workstations as he gathered specific items. We have maybe 2 hours before they reach the perimeter. Maybe less if they're using the new aircraft. What new aircraft? Marcus demanded. The ones that don't show up on radar, Sam said, stuffing a device that looked like a crystalline circuit board into his backpack. I've seen them 3 times in the past year. Silent, fast, and they can hover in impossible ways. Elena watched the boy's methodical preparations with growing admiration and horror. No child should possess this level of tactical awareness, yet Sam moved with the efficiency of someone who'd rehearsed this scenario countless times. Sam, she said gently, we need to know who these people are, who you really are. The boy's hands stilled on a metallic sphere that pulsed with inner light. For a moment, his carefully constructed composure cracked, revealing the frightened child beneath. My father worked for them, he said finally. He was part of a project called Prometheus. They were trying to create enhanced human intelligence through genetic modification and neural implants. David's face paled. Jesus Christ, kid, you're talking about human experimentation. My father thought he could control it, Sam continued, his voice barely above a whisper. He thought he could take their resources and redirect the research toward helping humanity instead of weaponizing it. He was wrong. The radio crackled again, and this time the transmission was so clear it might have been coming from just outside the cave. Confirm visual on anomalous energy readings, adjusting approach vector. They're tracking your inventions, Marcus realized. The power sources you're using. Leave signature traces, yes, Sam finished. I've tried to mask them, but some energy always bleeds through. It's like trying to hide a lighthouse with a handkerchief. Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. Sam, what happened to your father? The boy's eyes went distant, and when he spoke, his voice carried the hollow echo of old trauma. He tried to run, tried to take me and disappear. They found us in a safe house in Colorado Springs. He told me to hide in the ventilation system and gave me this. Sam pulled out a small device that looked like a cross between a compass and a smartphone. It's programmed with everything he knew: safe routes, supply caches, technical specifications, names of people who might help. He said if anything happened to him, I should find the deepest, most isolated place I could and wait for the right people to come along. The right people? Elena asked. People who would see what I could do and want to protect it instead of exploit it. Sam looked at each of them in turn. People like you. A new sound cut through the morning air, a low thrumming that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Sam's head snapped up, his face draining of color. They're here, he breathed. Marcus grabbed his binoculars and scrambled to the cave entrance. I don't see anything. You won't, Sam said, already sealing equipment into protective cases. Not until they want you to. The thrumming grew louder, and Elena felt it in her bones, a vibration that seemed to resonate with something deep in her chest. Whatever was making that sound, it wasn't any aircraft she'd ever encountered. There's another way out, Sam announced, hefting his pack. A passage that leads to the old mining tunnels. It's narrow and dangerous, but it comes out 12 miles north. What about all this? David gestured to the workshop around them. Sam's expression hardened with resolve far beyond his years. I've been planning for this day for 3 years. Everything important is either coming with us or about to be destroyed. He moved to a central console and began entering a complex sequence of commands. Once we're clear, I'll trigger the containment protocols. They'll find an empty cave and a lot of melted rock. The thrumming suddenly stopped, leaving behind a silence that felt more ominous than any sound. In that moment, Elena realized their quiet morning of discovery had become a desperate race for survival against an enemy that possessed technology beyond conventional understanding. Storm had passed by dawn, leaving the mountain air crisp and thin. Marcus found Danny already awake, hunched over a device that looked like a cross between a radio and a telescope, its crystalline components humming with energy. The boy's fingers danced across controls that seemed to respond to his touch before he even made contact. They're still out there, Danny whispered, without looking up. 3 miles northeast, camped in the old mining station. 6 of them now. Sarah emerged from her sleeping bag, immediately alert. 6? There were only 4 yesterday. The others arrived during the storm. Danny's voice carried a weight that seemed impossible for someone his age. They always send more when they're close to finding me. Jake stirred near the cave entrance, his ranger instincts kicking in. Kid, we need details. Who exactly are these people? Danny finally turned from his device, and Marcus was struck by how ancient the boy's eyes looked in the morning light. They called themselves the Prometheus Group, government contractors, but not the kind you read about in newspapers. They made me. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah found her voice first. Made you? Not like a robot, Danny said quickly, seeing their expressions. But they took children, gifted children, and they experimented. Enhanced our cognitive abilities through a combination of gene therapy, neural implants, and chemical treatments. He pulled back his dark hair, revealing a small, nearly invisible scar at the base of his skull. Most of the others didn't survive the process. Marcus felt sick. How many others? Started with 37 of us. By the time I escaped, there were only 4 left. Danny's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted something on his scanning device. I was their greatest success and their biggest failure. I could create things they never imagined, but I couldn't stop asking why they were doing it. Jake moved closer to the cave entrance, his hand instinctively reaching for the radio on his belt before remembering Danny's warning about electronic signals. How long ago did you escape? 18 months. They've been hunting me ever since. Danny stood and walked to a section of the cave wall that looked solid. He pressed his palm against it, and Marcus watched in amazement as the rock face shimmered and became transparent, revealing another chamber beyond. Everything I've built here, it's all designed to stay hidden and to survive. Through the transparent wall, Marcus could see incredible machines, some recognizable as more advanced versions of the devices they'd already witnessed, others completely alien in their design. Floating platforms defied gravity, while organic-looking computers pulsed with bioluminescent light. The energy source, Sarah breathed, staring at a central column that seemed to contain swirling galaxies of light. It's not nuclear, is it? 0-point energy extraction, Danny confirmed. Theoretical to most scientists, but I figured out how to make it practical. One of those machines could power a city for decades without any fuel source. And that's what they want, Jake said, understanding flooding his features. Not just you, but your inventions. They want to weaponize everything I create. Danny's voice hardened. Clean energy becomes a way to control nations. Medical nanobots become assassination tools, every breakthrough twisted into something destructive. Marcus stepped closer to the transparent barrier. But you're just a kid. Even with enhancements, how did you learn to build all this? Time moves differently when your mind processes information at accelerated rates, Danny explained. I can absorb and synthesize knowledge faster than most supercomputers, but speed isn't wisdom, and intelligence isn't the same as understanding right from wrong. A soft chime from Danny's scanning device interrupted them. The boy's face went pale as he read the display. They're moving, coming this way. How long do we have? Jake asked, immediately shifting into tactical mode. 2 hours, maybe 3 if they're being cautious about the terrain. Danny began shutting down visible equipment with practiced efficiency. But there's something different about this group. They're carrying technology I don't recognize. Sarah grabbed Danny's arm gently. We're not leaving you to face them alone. You don't understand, Danny said desperately. These people have resources beyond anything you can imagine. Military training, experimental weapons, and they'll kill anyone who gets in their way. You've already seen too much. Then we'd better make sure we're not here when they arrive, Marcus said firmly. You must have an escape route planned. Danny hesitated, then nodded slowly. There's a way out through the lower caves. It leads to a network of tunnels that emerge 5 miles south, near the old timber road. But once we leave here, I can't come back. They'll find this place and destroy everything. Jake was already gathering their gear. Sometimes you have to abandon one position to fight another day. But my work, Danny protested. Years of research, prototypes that could help millions of people. Ideas live in here. Marcus tapped his temple. Everything else can be rebuilt. The scanning device chimed again, more urgently this time. The descent into darkness felt like entering another world entirely. Marcus led the way with his headlamp cutting through the black void, followed closely by Elena, then Sarah, with David bringing up the rear. The narrow passage Kai had revealed behind the false wall of his workshop stretched downward at a steep angle, the air growing colder with each step. How far does this go? Sarah whispered, her voice echoing off unseen walls. Kai's response came from somewhere ahead, barely audible. 1/4 mile, maybe more. I've only been to the bottom twice. The tunnel walls were smooth, too smooth for natural formation. Elena ran her fingers along the surface, feeling the subtle ridges that suggested machine work. Kai, did you carve this? No. It was already here when I found the cave. My father said the mountain has many secrets. David's archaeologist instincts kicked in. The construction reminded him of something, but he couldn't place what. The angle of descent, the precision of the walls, it felt ancient yet impossibly advanced. After 20 minutes of careful navigation, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber that swallowed their headlamp beams. The air here thrummed with a low, almost subsonic frequency that made their bones vibrate. Kai moved to what appeared to be a blank wall and pressed his palm against a specific point. Suddenly, the chamber erupted in soft blue light. Sweet Jesus, Marcus breathed. The space before them defied comprehension. Crystalline formations jutted from the walls, but these weren't natural crystals. They pulsed with internal light, connected by metallic threads that formed intricate patterns across the chamber's surface. In the center stood a series of platforms at different heights, each supporting devices that seemed to blend organic curves with geometric precision. What is this place? Elena moved toward the nearest platform, where a device resembling a metallic flower tracked her movement with sensor-like petals. Kai's usual confidence seemed to drain away. I call it the archive. My father brought me here when I was 7, just before— He paused, swallowing hard. Before they took him, he said our family were guardians, that we'd been protecting this place for generations. Sarah approached one of the wall crystals, noting how the light within shifted as she drew near. These aren't just decorative, are they? They're storing something. Information, Kai confirmed. More than any computer could hold. My father said it contained knowledge from before. Before what? He never explained. David found himself drawn to markings etched into the chamber floor. The symbols weren't like anything in his archaeological experience, yet they seemed to follow logical patterns. Kai, your inventions, the water purifier, the power cells, did you design them, or did you find the plans here? The boy's silence was answer enough. Marcus whistled low. You're telling us this kid has been reverse engineering alien technology? Not alien, Kai said quickly. At least I don't think so. My father said it came from the deep time, from when the earth was young but not empty. Elena's scientific mind raced. The implications were staggering. If this technology could be understood, replicated safely, how much of it have you managed to decode? Barely anything. The water purifier took me 2 years to understand, and I'm still not sure I got it right. Most of it. He gestured helplessly at the incomprehensible array around them. It's like trying to explain quantum physics to someone who hasn't learned to count. A new sound echoed from the tunnel they'd descended, the scrape of boots on stone. Everyone froze. They found the passage, Kai whispered, his face going pale. I thought the false wall would hold them longer. Marcus was already moving, checking his rifle and motioning for the others to take cover behind the platforms. How many other ways out of here? None that I know of. The scraping sounds grew closer, accompanied by voices. David counted at least 3 different speakers, their words unclear but their intent obvious from the tone. Sarah crouched behind a crystal formation, her mind working frantically. Kai, can any of these devices be weaponized? For defense? The boy shook his head. I don't know what most of them do, and the ones I've figured out, they're not weapons. At least, I don't think they are. Elena found herself studying the intricate patterns on the walls with new urgency. There has to be something. A people advanced enough to build this place wouldn't leave themselves defenseless. Maybe they did, David said grimly. Maybe that's why they're gone, and this place is just a tomb. The voices in the tunnel grew clearer. Men's voices, speaking in clipped, professional tones about securing the asset and containing the breach. They were close now, perhaps minutes away from reaching the chamber. Kai moved to the central platform and placed both hands on what looked like a control surface. There might be one option, but he looked at them with frightened eyes. My father warned me never to activate the deep protocols. He said some knowledge was too dangerous, even for guardians. The first headlamp beam appeared at the tunnel mouth. Too dangerous for who? Marcus asked, sighting down his rifle. The storm that had been threatening all morning finally broke as Sarah helped Marcus gather the last of his essential equipment. Rain lashed against the cave entrance while thunder echoed through the mountain valleys below. Inside the sanctuary, the soft hum of Marcus's inventions seemed louder somehow, as if responding to the electrical charge in the air. The atmospheric ionization device, Marcus explained, pointing to a crystalline structure that pulsed with blue light. It can predict electromagnetic disturbances up to 72 hours in advance. That's how I knew they'd use the storm as cover. Jake watched the boy's hands shake as he disconnected delicate components. Despite his obvious intelligence, Marcus was still just a kid, maybe 16 at most, and the weight of whatever he was carrying was crushing him. How long have you been running from them? 3 years, 4 months, 16 days. The precision of his answer chilled them all. Ever since my father's lab was destroyed. Elena stepped forward, her medical training making her notice what the others missed. Dark circles under his eyes, the tremor in his hands, the way he favored his left side. When did you last eat a proper meal? And I mean something other than berries and whatever you can forage up here. Marcus paused, a complex device half dismantled in his hands. For a moment, his carefully maintained composure cracked, revealing the lost child beneath the genius. Time becomes fluid when you're focused on survival. The admission hung in the air, as Sarah and Jake exchanged worried glances. They'd assumed his isolation was temporary, perhaps a few weeks or months at most. The reality was far more sobering. "My father worked for them initially," Marcus continued, his voice barely audible above the storm. "Quantum energy research. Clean, unlimited power. But when he discovered what they really wanted, he stopped, his breathing becoming rapid and shallow." Elena moved closer, recognizing the signs of panic. "It's okay. You don't have to explain everything right now." "Yes, I do." His voice gained strength. "Because once we leave here, there's no going back. They'll find this place eventually, and everything will be destroyed, just like before." He walked to what appeared to be an ordinary rock wall and pressed his palm against a hidden sensor. The wall slid away, revealing a smaller chamber beyond. Inside, holographic displays showed complex equations and molecular structures that seemed to dance in three-dimensional space. "This is why they hunt me," Marcus said, gesturing to the displays. "Not just for what I know, but for what my father embedded in my memory before he died. Quantum encryption patterns that exist only in my mind. Without them, his research is useless. With them, someone could build a weapon," Jake finished grimly. Marcus nodded. "Or save the world. The applications are limitless. Medical technology that could cure genetic diseases, environmental restoration systems, space travel capabilities, decades ahead of current science. But in the wrong hands," a low rumble interrupted him, different from the thunder outside. Marcus went rigid, his eyes wide with terror. "They're here," he whispered. Sarah felt her heart rate spike. "How can you tell?" "The seismic sensors I placed throughout the mountain. Those aren't natural vibrations." He began moving with desperate efficiency, triggering hidden mechanisms throughout the sanctuary. Displays shut down, equipment folded into impossibly compact forms, entire wall sections rotated to reveal escape routes. "There's a passage that leads to the north face," Marcus said, shoving a backpack at Elena. "It connects to an old mining tunnel system. If we can reach the valley floor—" The rumbling grew louder, accompanied by a rhythmic thumping that could only be helicopter rotors fighting the storm winds. Jake peered out through the cave entrance and cursed. 3 aircraft, military grade. "They're setting down on the plateau about half a mile up." "How did they find you?" Sarah demanded, as she helped Marcus secure the last of his equipment. "I don't know. I've been so careful. Used every concealment protocol my father taught me." His voice cracked with frustration and fear. "Unless—" He stopped, his face going pale. "The quantum resonance detector. If they finally perfected it, it could track the unique energy signature of my father's technology." Elena grabbed his shoulders. "Focus, Marcus. We need to move, now." The boy nodded, triggering one final sequence. Throughout the sanctuary, hidden charges began their countdown. Within minutes, the entire underground complex would collapse, burying years of work beneath tons of rock. "This way," Marcus said, leading them toward a narrow opening that had appeared in the chamber's far wall. "Stay close and don't touch the walls. Some of the passages are booby-trapped." As they squeezed through the opening, Sarah heard new sounds filtering through the storm. Shouted orders, the whir of machinery, boots on stone. Their pursuers had reached the cave entrance. The chase had begun in earnest, and there was nowhere left to hide. The morning brought an eerie stillness to the mountains that made Sarah's skin crawl. Even the wind had died, leaving only the distant sound of water trickling somewhere in the depths of the cave system. She found Marcus hunched over the workbench, his fingers dancing across the surface of one of Kai's impossible devices, a crystalline cube that pulsed with soft blue light. "Any luck?" she asked, settling beside him with 2 cups of coffee brewed on Kai's self-heating camping stove. Marcus shook his head, frustration evident in the tight lines around his eyes. "It's like trying to read a language that hasn't been invented yet. The energy patterns don't follow any known principles of physics, but somehow they're stable. More than stable, they're elegant." Sarah watched the cube's hypnotic pulse. 3 days had passed since Kai's warning about them coming back, and the boy had grown increasingly agitated. He barely slept, constantly checking the cave entrances and muttering about preparations they needed to make. "Where is he now?" Marcus asked. "Down in the lower chambers with Elena. She's been trying to get him to talk about his past, but he clams up every time she mentions how he learned to build these things." A sharp whistle echoed through the cave, Kai's signal. Sarah and Marcus exchanged glances before grabbing their gear and hurrying toward the sound. They found Elena and Kai at the main entrance, both pressed against the stone wall beside the carefully camouflaged opening. "Movement in the valley," Kai whispered, his young face pale but determined. "2 vehicles, maybe 3. They're trying to be subtle, but they're following the wrong trail, for now." Sarah peered through the concealed opening. Far below, she could make out tiny specks moving against the green tapestry of the forest. From this distance, they looked like ordinary hikers, but something about their formation seemed too precise, too purposeful. "How long do we have?" Marcus asked. "Hours. Maybe less if they find the real path." Kai's voice cracked slightly. "I've been working on countermeasures, but I never had time to test them properly." Elena placed a protective hand on the boy's shoulder. "Kai, we need to know who these people are. Why are they after you?" The teenager's jaw tightened. "Because I was stupid. Because I thought I could trust them." He turned away from the entrance, his shoulders rigid with barely contained emotion. "My parents weren't researchers. They were thieves, brilliant thieves who stole corporate secrets and sold them to the highest bidder. When they found me building things they couldn't understand, they saw dollar signs." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. "What happened to them?" "They made a deal with some government contractor, promised to deliver me and my inventions. But they got greedy, tried to play multiple buyers against each other." Kai's hands clenched into fists. "The buyers didn't appreciate the competition. My parents are dead, and now everyone thinks they own me." The weight of his words settled over the group like a physical presence. Marcus cleared his throat carefully. "Kai, some of your inventions, they could help millions of people. The energy systems alone could solve climate change, end poverty, and start wars." Kai interrupted sharply. "Do you think I haven't considered that? Every device I build could be weaponized, perverted, used to control people instead of helping them. That's why I hide. That's why I live alone." Another whistle pierced the air. This one longer, more urgent. Kai's early warning system, distributed throughout the mountain, was alerting them to closer movement. "They found the path," Kai said, his voice oddly calm now that the waiting was over. "Everyone grab what you can carry. We're moving to the deep caves." "What about your workshop?" Elena asked. "All your work will be destroyed before they can take it." Kai was already moving, pulling small devices from hidden alcoves with practiced efficiency. "I've learned to travel light and leave nothing useful behind." Sarah watched the boy who wasn't really a boy anymore, this genius forced to grow up too fast, carrying knowledge that both blessed and cursed him. "There has to be another way. We could contact the authorities, get protection." Kai laughed bitterly. "Who do you think is climbing the mountain right now? These people don't exist on any official roster. They're the kind who clean up loose ends permanently." The sound of distant voices drifted up from far below, still faint but unmistakably real. The hunters had found their prey's trail. "Cove," Kai ordered, shouldering a pack filled with his most precious inventions. "And whatever happens, don't let them take you alive. They'll use you to get to me, and I won't be responsible for anyone else's death." As they retreated deeper into the mountain's embrace, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't just running from the men below, they were running toward something far worse. The frozen mountain air cut through Sarah's lungs as she pressed herself against the rocky outcrop, watching the dark figures methodically search the abandoned camp below. Through her binoculars, she counted at least 8 operatives in tactical gear, their movements precise and coordinated. They weren't hikers or park rangers. These people moved like military. Marcus crouched beside her, his breath forming white puffs in the early morning air. "They found us faster than expected," he whispered. "Too fast," Sarah replied, adjusting the focus on her binoculars. Someone's feeding them information. 100 yards behind them, David kept watch while Tom and Elena worked frantically to pack the most critical components from Kai's inventions. The boy himself sat hunched over his tablet, fingers flying across the screen as he attempted to remotely wipe the digital traces of their presence. "The atmospheric processor," Kai said without looking up. "If they get that data, they can reverse engineer the entire system within months." Sarah's stomach knotted. She'd seen firsthand what that device could do, how it could literally pull clean water from desert air, how it could scrub carbon from the atmosphere and convert it to breathable oxygen. In the right hands, it could solve climate change. In the wrong hands. "Done," Kai announced, closing the tablet with a sharp snap. "But they'll still have whatever Dr. Chen transmitted before we stopped her." The betrayal still stung. Dr. Chen had seemed genuinely concerned about Kai's welfare, genuinely horrified by what the corporation had done to his parents. But the tracking device hidden in her jacket had led them straight here, and the encrypted communications Sarah had found on the woman's phone told a different story entirely. "Movement," David called softly from his position. "They're heading up the North Ridge." Sarah cursed under her breath. The North Ridge was the most direct route to their current position, but it also offered the best tactical advantage for anyone pursuing them. These operatives knew exactly where to look. "We need to move now," Marcus said, shouldering his pack. "The south face is our only option." Tom looked up from stuffing equipment into his oversized hiking bag. "That's a technical climb, and we don't have proper gear for everyone." "We don't have a choice," Elena replied, securing the atmospheric processor components in a specially padded case. "These people aren't here to negotiate." Kai stood abruptly, his face pale but determined. "There's another way. The old mining tunnel system about half a mile east. My father mapped it years ago. It connects to the valley on the other side of the mountain." Sarah studied the boy's expression. There was something he wasn't telling them. "What's the catch?" "It's unstable. My parents avoided it because of the collapse risk, but it would get us out without a technical climb, and they'd never expect us to use it." The sound of voices carried on the wind. Their pursuers were getting closer. Sarah made the decision. "Show us." They moved quickly but carefully through the sparse mountain vegetation, Kai leading them along what seemed like random animal paths but which Sarah realized formed a deliberate route away from the main trails. The boy had spent 3 years learning every inch of these mountains, and it showed. The entrance to the mining tunnel was little more than a dark slash in the mountainside, partially concealed by fallen rocks and decades of overgrowth. Ancient wooden supports framed the opening, their surfaces weathered and cracked. "Jesus," Tom muttered, shining his flashlight into the tunnel. "This thing's older than my grandfather." "The first section is stable," Kai insisted. "My father reinforced it when I was younger. It's the deeper passages where the problems start." Elena tested one of the wooden supports with her hand. It felt solid enough, but appearances could be deceiving. "How far do we need to go?" 2 miles, maybe 3. "The tunnel follows the old ore vein, so it's not straight." Sarah weighed their options. Behind them, armed operatives with unknown intentions. Ahead, a potentially deadly passage through an unstable mountain. Neither choice offered guarantees. "Sir?" A voice echoed from somewhere above them, one of the tactical team, using radio communications. "Go," Sarah decided. "Everyone stay close, watch your footing, and if anyone hears creaking or shifting, we stop immediately." One by one, they disappeared into the tunnel's mouth. The darkness swallowed them completely within a few steps, their flashlight beams creating dancing shadows on the rough stone walls. The air inside was stale and cold, carrying the musty scent of decades-old timber and mineral deposits. As they moved deeper into the mountain, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something worse than what they'd left behind. The tunnel felt like a trap, despite being their choice. But with each step forward, the impossible inventions in their packs represented hope for millions of people. Behind them, the voices of their pursuers grew fainter. Ahead, the mountain itself seemed to be listening, waiting to decide their fate. The helicopter's rotors thundered overhead, as Marcus pressed himself against the rocky outcropping, his heart hammering against his ribs. Sarah and Jake flanked him on either side, their faces pale in the dim morning light filtering through the pine canopy. Below them, the boys' sanctuary lay exposed like an open wound in the mountainside. "How many?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible over the mechanical roar. Marcus counted the black shapes rappelling down thick ropes. 8, maybe 9. His military training kicked in, cataloguing their movements, their equipment. These weren't search and rescue personnel. The tactical gear, the synchronized descent, the way they moved with predatory precision. This was an extraction team. Jake's hand trembled as he gripped his phone. "We have to call someone. The FBI, the military." "With what proof?" Marcus grabbed Jake's wrist. "They'll be gone before anyone arrives, along with everything down there." The boy, David, he'd finally told them his name, had vanished into the depths of his underground days the moment the helicopter appeared. The kid had survival instincts honed by years of paranoia, but Marcus doubted even David's elaborate escape routes would be enough against this level of coordination. The lead operative reached the cave entrance first, gesturing with sharp hand signals. His team fanned out with military efficiency, some disappearing into the main chamber while others secured the perimeter. Marcus caught a glimpse of their insignia, a stylized phoenix wrapped around a globe. "Cerberus Corporation," he breathed. Sarah's eyes widened. "The defense contractor?" "I thought they were just rumors." "Black budget operations," Marcus confirmed. "If they're here, David's inventions are worth more than we imagined." A brilliant flash erupted from within the cave, followed by the sharp crack of an explosion. One of the operatives stumbled backward, his tactical vest smoking. Even from their concealed position, Marcus could hear the man's curses echoing off the canyon walls. "The kid's fighting back," Jake said with grim satisfaction. But Marcus knew it wouldn't be enough. Cerberus had resources David couldn't match, no matter how brilliant his innovations. They needed to even the odds. "Sarah, take Jake and circle around to the North Ridge. If David has another exit up there, guide him toward the old mining trail." Marcus checked his watch. "I'll give you 20 minutes, then create a distraction." "What kind of distraction?" Sarah's voice carried an edge of fear. Marcus smiled grimly. "The kind that brings the whole mountain down on their heads." As Sarah and Jake disappeared into the forest, Marcus began his careful descent toward the helicopter. The pilot had remained behind, engines idling, ready for a quick extraction. Standard operating procedure, but it left the aircraft vulnerable. Another explosion shook the mountainside, smaller than the first. David was running out of defensive options. Marcus quickened his pace, using every shadow and depression in the rocky terrain to mask his approach. The pilot never saw him coming. Marcus's combat training took over as he yanked open the cockpit door. The pilot reached for his sidearm, but Marcus was faster, applying a blood choke with practiced efficiency. The man went limp in seconds. "Sorry, friend," Marcus muttered, dragging the unconscious pilot clear of the aircraft. He'd been hoping to avoid violence, but David's life hung in the balance. The helicopter's control panel was more complex than the military birds he'd trained on, but the fundamentals remained the same. Marcus's fingers danced over switches and dials as he brought the engines to full power. Through the windscreen, he could see Cerberus operatives emerging from the cave, their leader barking orders into his radio. They'd found David's workshop, but the boy himself remained elusive. Good. Marcus pulled back on the collective, lifting the helicopter clear of the landing zone. He wasn't a pilot. His flight training consisted of emergency procedures and basic maneuvers, but he didn't need to fly well. He just needed to fly loud. Banking sharply toward the cave entrance, Marcus triggered every warning light and alarm in the cockpit. The helicopter screamed through the narrow canyon like an avenging angel, its rotor wash scattering loose rocks and debris. The Cerberus team scattered, diving for cover as their extraction vehicle transformed into a weapon. Marcus caught a glimpse of movement on the North Ridge, a small figure racing through the trees with Sarah and Jake close behind. David had made it out. But Marcus's celebration was short-lived. Warning lights cascaded across the instrument panel as the helicopter shuddered under the stress of his amateur piloting. The engine coughed, then caught, then coughed again. Below him, the Cerberus leader had recovered from his initial shock and was taking aim with a military-grade rifle. Marcus yanked the controls hard left as bullets sparked off the helicopter's fuselage. The aircraft lurched violently, its damaged systems finally surrendering to physics. Marcus fought to maintain control as the mountain rushed up to meet him, but he'd bought David the time he needed. Sometimes that had to be enough. The compound's alarm system shrieked through the mountain air as Sarah grabbed Marcus's arm, pulling him toward the cave entrance. Behind them, the whir of helicopter rotors grew louder, cutting through the dawn like mechanical predators. "They found us faster than I expected," Marcus said, his voice tight with controlled panic. He clutched a small device that looked like a cross between a compass and a smartphone. "The thermal dampeners only lasted 6 hours. Dr. Chen emerged from the laboratory section, his arms full of data drives and notebooks. "How much time do we have?" The sound of boots on stone echoed from the upper cave entrance. Sarah's heart hammered as she realized their escape route was already compromised. Marcus's face went white. "The back tunnel," he whispered, pointing toward a narrow opening partially hidden behind a water recycling unit. "It leads to the old mining shaft on the north face." Jake hefted their emergency pack, while Tom helped Dr. Chen secure the research materials. The approaching footsteps were closer now, accompanied by the harsh beam of military-grade flashlights cutting through the cave's natural darkness. "Marcus Holloway!" The voice was amplified, professional, commanding. "This is Agent Morrison with the Department of Advanced Research. We know you're here. Come out peacefully and no one gets hurt." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain cold. She'd heard that voice before, in her nightmares about government facilities and disappeared scientists, the stories her father used to tell about researchers who asked too many questions. Marcus was frantically destroying equipment now, using some kind of molecular dissolver that made metal and plastic components simply vanish into grey dust. "They're lying," he hissed. "They'll take everything, classify it, weaponize what they can use and bury the rest." The narrow tunnel was barely wide enough for an adult, carved through solid rock decades ago by miners who'd given up when the silver vein played out. Sarah crawled behind Marcus, followed by Dr. Chen, then Jake and Tom. The sound of their pursuers grew muffled but didn't disappear. "How far?" Tom's whisper seemed to boom in the confined space. 200 yards to the shaft, then we rappelled down to the tree line." Marcus's response came back strained. "But they'll have teams positioned around the mountain. They're not taking any chances this time." Dr. Chen's breathing was labored behind Sarah. The older man wasn't built for this kind of physical stress, and she could hear him struggling. "What exactly are they after, Marcus? What makes your work so dangerous to them?" Marcus paused his crawling, and Sarah nearly bumped into him. In the dim light from his improvised torch, his expression was haunted. "The energy source I developed, it doesn't just provide clean power, it proves that our entire economic system is built on artificial scarcity. Oil, coal, nuclear fuel, all of it becomes obsolete overnight. And the medical applications?" He swallowed hard. "Let's just say there are entire industries that would cease to exist." A new sound reached them, drilling. Their pursuers had found the tunnel entrance and were widening it for faster pursuit. "Move," Jake urged from behind. Philosophy later, survival now. The tunnel opened suddenly into a larger space, and Sarah felt cool mountain air on her face. They emerged onto a narrow ledge carved into the cliff face, with a dizzying drop into pine forest below. The morning sun painted the peaks around them in brilliant gold, but Sarah couldn't appreciate the beauty with armed agents closing in. Marcus already had climbing gear in his hands, impossibly lightweight rope, and what looked like self-installing anchors. "These will support our weight, but we have to move fast. Once they reach the tunnel exit, we're sitting ducks." Dr. Chen looked pale as he stared down the cliff face. "I'm not sure I can..." You can, Sarah said firmly, helping him into a harness. Tom will go first, then you, then me. Jake will help coordinate, from above. The drilling sound was getting louder. Marcus attached his mysterious anchors to the rock face with disturbing ease. They seemed to bond with the stone itself, creating secure points in seconds rather than the minutes it should have taken. Tom disappeared over the edge, his descent controlled and smooth. Dr. Chen followed, moving slowly but steadily. Sarah was about to clip in when the first head appeared at the tunnel mouth. Go! Marcus shoved her toward the rope. I'll delay them. Sarah started to protest, but Jake was already pushing her over the ledge. As she rappelled down the cliff face, she heard Marcus's voice echoing off the rocks above, shouting coordinates that made no sense. Then came a sound like thunder, and loose stone began raining down around them. Whatever Marcus had done, it was buying them time. But Sarah knew their real escape had only just begun. The helicopter's rotors cut through the mountain air like angry wasps as Elena pressed herself against the rocky outcropping, her heart hammering against her ribs. Below them, Marcus had Alex pressed close to the cave wall, one hand covering the boy's mouth as armed figures rappelled from the aircraft with military precision. Nexus Corp, Alex whispered when Marcus moved his hand, the words barely audible over the mechanical thunder above. They found us. Elena counted 6 figures in tactical gear descending on cables, their movements coordinated and efficient. These weren't government agents or rescue workers. Everything about them screamed corporate security, the kind that operated in grey areas where questions weren't asked and answers weren't given. The neural interface, Alex said, his young face pale with terror. If they get it, if they reverse engineer the quantum processor, they won't. Marcus cut him off. But Elena could hear the uncertainty beneath his determination. They were outnumbered and outgunned, trapped on a mountainside with nowhere to run. The lead operative touched down first, immediately sweeping the area with what looked like some kind of scanner. A red light blinked frantically as it passed over the cave entrance, and the man's voice carried clearly in the thin air. Confirmed quantum signature. Target is inside. Elena's mind raced. The sanctuary's entrance was hidden, but these people had technology that could detect Alex's inventions through solid rock. They'd come prepared, which meant they knew exactly what they were looking for. There's another way out, Alex whispered urgently. Through the thermal vents. But we have to reach the workshop first. Marcus shook his head. Too risky. They'll see us the moment we move. Not if we create a distraction. Alex's eyes held that familiar gleam Elena had come to recognize, the look of a mind that saw solutions where others saw only problems. The sonic disruptor I was working on. If I can activate it remotely. He pulled out a device that looked like a cross between a smartphone and a television remote, its surface covered in symbols Elena didn't recognize. His fingers danced across the interface with practiced ease. Below them, the operatives had reached the cave entrance. Elena watched in fascination and horror as they produced what looked like a silver rod that they pressed against the rock face. Immediately, the stone began to glow and soften, creating an opening large enough for a person to walk through. Molecular destabilizer, Alex breathed. They've been busy. The first operative disappeared into the cave, followed by 2 others. The remaining 3 took positions outside, their weapons trained on the mountainside with professional vigilance. Alex's device chimed softly. Got it, he whispered. Cover your ears. The sound that erupted from deep within the mountain was like nothing Elena had ever heard. A deep, resonant pulse that seemed to vibrate through her bones and make her teeth ache. The operatives outside the cave stumbled, their hands flying to their helmets as the sonic waves disrupted their communication equipment. Now, Alex said, and they moved. The path Alex led them on defied logic, a narrow ledge that curved around the mountain's face, invisible from below unless you knew exactly where to look. Elena's hiking experience served her well as she followed Marcus and Alex along the treacherous route, her boots finding purchase on stone worn smooth by centuries of wind and weather. Behind them, shouts echoed from the cave as the operatives discovered the sanctuary's entrance. Elena risked a glance back and saw figures moving through the opening Alex's sonic device had created in the hidden door. They were inside. "The thermal vent," Alex panted as they reached a crevice in the rock face that breathed warm air like a sleeping dragon. "It connects to the workshop. We can get to the interface before they do." The opening was barely wide enough for Elena's shoulders, and she fought down a surge of claustrophobia as they squeezed through the gap. The passage beyond was a natural tunnel carved by volcanic activity, its walls still warm to the touch, despite the mountain's current dormancy. They emerged in the workshop to find chaos. Alarms blared as detection systems registered the unauthorized intrusion, and holographic displays flickered with warning messages in multiple languages. Alex ran to a console and began typing frantically. "Emergency protocols," he explained as his fingers flew across the interface. "I can lock down the critical systems, but not for long." Elena heard footsteps in the outer sanctuary, heavy boots on metal flooring. The operatives had found their way through the maze of tunnels and chambers. They had minutes, maybe less. "The neural interface," Marcus said. "Where is it?" Alex pointed to a vault-like chamber behind them, its door sealed with multiple locks, electronic, mechanical, and something that pulsed with the same blue energy Elena had seen powering his other inventions. "But if I open it now, they'll detect the quantum signature. They'll know exactly where we are." The footsteps were getting closer, accompanied by voices speaking in clipped professional tones. Elena could make out fragments. "Quantum resonance off the charts," and "target must be close." Alex's hands hovered over the console, his young face twisted with an impossible choice. The helicopter's rotors cut through the mountain air like a metallic heartbeat, growing louder with each passing second. Marcus pressed himself against the cave wall, watching through the narrow observation slit as the aircraft circled the peak below them. Sarah's breathing was shallow beside him, her medical training warring with the terror etched across her face. "They found us faster than I expected," Kai whispered, his fingers dancing across a makeshift control panel. The screens around them flickered with data streams and thermal readings. The energy signature from the quantum generator must have been stronger than I calculated. David crouched near the cave entrance, his mountaineering experience useless against this technological nightmare. "How many?" "Initial sweep shows 12 personnel," Kai replied, his voice eerily calm for a 15-year-old. "Military contractors, not government. Blackwater derivatives, probably. They're setting up a perimeter at the base camp where you first found me." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Elena's down there." The boy's fingers paused over the controls. "I know." Through the speakers connected to Kai's surveillance network, they heard the crackle of radio chatter. Cold, professional voices coordinating a search pattern. Sarah grabbed Marcus's arm as one transmission came through clearly. "Target acquired at base camp. Female, mid-30s, civilian gear." "We have to go down there," David said, already reaching for his climbing equipment. "No." Kai's voice carried an authority that seemed impossible from someone so young. "That's exactly what they want. Elena is leverage now, bait to draw me out of the cave system." "She's our friend," Sarah hissed. "We can't just leave her." "You don't understand." Kai turned from his screens, and for the first time since they'd known him, he looked entirely like the frightened child he was. "These people killed my parents. They burned down our laboratory, destroyed 3 years of research, and hunted me across 4 states. They don't take prisoners unless those prisoners serve a purpose." The radio crackled again. A new voice, smooth and cultured, speaking with the confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Dr. Chen, I know you can hear this. My name is Director Morrison. We have your friend, and she's quite safe for now. I think it's time we had a conversation." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Through the surveillance feeds, they watched Elena being led to a folding chair in the middle of their former campsite. Even from this distance, her defiance was evident in the set of her shoulders. "Your parents weren't doctors," David said suddenly, pieces clicking together in his mind. "Chen isn't your real name, is it?" Kai shook his head slowly. My father was Dr. James Chen, quantum physicist at the Stanford Research Institute. My mother was Dr. Lisa Chen, biomedical engineer. They adopted me when I was 7, after the state decided my biological parents were unfit to raise a gifted child. Gifted, Sarah repeated. You mean genius? I prefer freak, Kai said bitterly. IQ tests don't measure what I can do. Pattern recognition, system integration, technological intuition. I see connections that shouldn't exist. My adoptive parents understood that. They tried to protect me, to give me a normal life while helping me develop my abilities safely. The radio interrupted again. Dr. Chen, your friend has been asking about you. She seems to think you're just a lost boy who needs help. Should I correct her assumption? Or would you prefer to do that yourself? Kai's hands clenched into fists. They're going to use her as a test subject. Everything I've built down here, every innovation, they want to understand how my mind works. They think if they can replicate the process, they can create more like me. Can they? Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted the answer. No, Kai said quietly. They tried before, with other children. The neural patterns can't be duplicated through conventional means. But they'll kill Elena trying, just like they killed the others. Through the cave system, a new sound echoed, boots on stone, moving carefully but deliberately upward. The search teams had found the lower entrance. Time's up, David said, checking his gear. Whatever plan you have, we need it now. Kai moved to a section of the wall Marcus hadn't noticed before, pressing his palm against what looked like solid rock. A panel slid away, revealing a narrow passage that seemed to extend deep into the mountain. There's an emergency exit that leads to the north face. You can rappel down to the tree line and circle back to the road. What about Elena? Sarah demanded. What about you? Marcus added. Kai was already moving toward the passage, but he paused at another control panel, his fingers flying over switches and dials. I'm going to give them what they came for. Me. But first, I'm going to make sure they can never use what they find here. The screens around them began flashing red, and a low humming filled the air, growing steadily louder. You have 90 seconds, Kai said, not looking back. Get out now. The helicopter's rotors cut through the mountain air as Sarah pressed her face against the window, watching the rocky terrain blur beneath them. Marcus sat across from her, his jaw set in grim determination, while Chen monitored the radio chatter streaming in from the FBI coordinating team below. 2 minutes out, the pilot called back. Sarah's stomach churned as she spotted the convoy of black vehicles snaking up the mountain road toward Kai's cave. They'd barely escaped the compound with the evidence of Dr. Meridian's human experiments, and now those same forces were closing in on the boy whose inventions had started it all. There, Marcus pointed toward a cluster of figures moving along the ridgeline. That's got to be them. Through her binoculars, Sarah could make out Kai's distinctive jacket as he led Elena and Tom through the treacherous terrain above his hidden sanctuary. Even from this distance, she could see they were moving with desperate urgency, the boy's small frame somehow navigating the rocky outcroppings with inhuman precision. The radio crackled. This is Agent Morrison. We have visual on the targets, moving to intercept. Chen grabbed the handset. Negative, Agent Morrison. Those are the victims, not the perpetrators. Dr. Meridian's people are the ones you want. Our orders are to secure all assets related to the Prometheus project. The boy and his technology are priority 1. Sarah felt her blood run cold. Even with everything they'd discovered about Meridian's horrific experiments, the government still saw Kai as nothing more than a valuable resource to be claimed. Set us down on that flat section, she told the pilot, pointing to a rocky shelf about 50 yards from where Kai and the others were climbing. We need to reach them first. The helicopter touched down with a jarring impact, and Sarah leaped out before the skids had fully settled. The thin mountain air burned her lungs as she scrambled across the loose scree, Marcus close behind her. Kai! She shouted over the wind. This way! The boy's head snapped up, his dark eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. Elena and Tom looked ready to collapse, their civilian hiking gear no match for this desperate flight through the wilderness. The sanctuary, Kai gasped as they reached him. "I have to destroy it before they—" "No time," Marcus interrupted, grabbing the boy's arm. "They're already inside. We need to get you somewhere safe." Below them, Sarah could hear the distinctive crack of the cave entrance being breached. Kai's face crumpled with anguish as muffled explosions echoed up from the depths of his underground workshop. 5 years, he whispered. 5 years of work, all gone. "The work was never the important part," Elena said fiercely, pulling the boy close. "You're what matters." Chen's voice carried across the wind from the helicopter. "We've got multiple vehicles converging on this position. Whatever we're doing, we need to do it now." Sarah looked back toward their aircraft and felt her heart sink. 3 black helicopters were rising from the valley below, moving to surround their position. There would be nowhere to run. "Wait," Kai said suddenly, his expression shifting from despair to something else entirely. "The pulse generator." He pulled a small device from his jacket, something Sarah had never seen before, no bigger than a smartphone but humming with barely contained energy. "Kai, what is that?" Tom asked nervously. "Electromagnetic pulse, but localized. It'll kill their electronics without hurting us, but only for maybe 10 minutes. The boy's fingers flew over the device's surface, making adjustments with the same fluid precision Sarah remembered from watching him work in his cave. After that, they'll switch to backup systems. 10 minutes to do what? Marcus demanded. Kai looked up at him with eyes that seemed far too old for his 15-year-old face. To disappear, really disappear, not just hide in another cave they can eventually find. The approaching helicopters were close enough now that Sarah could see tactical teams rappelling down lines, moving to cut off their escape routes. In moments they would be completely surrounded. "Do it," she said. Kai pressed something on the device, and the world went suddenly eerily quiet. The helicopter's engines died mid-flight, and Sarah watched in amazement as the aircraft auto-rotated down to emergency landings on the slopes below. Their own helicopter's systems flickered and went dark. "Move!" Chen shouted, shouldering an emergency pack. "They'll have backup power cells, handheld radios. This won't hold them long." As they scrambled down the far side of the ridge, Sarah could hear shouting echoing off the mountain faces behind them. Dr. Meridian's people and the government forces would be trapped together in the sudden technological blackout. But Kai was right. It wouldn't last. "There's an old mining trail about half a mile down," Tom called out, his local knowledge finally proving useful. "Connects to the highway near Miller's Creek." They plunged into the forest, following Kai as he somehow found footing on terrain that seemed impossibly steep. Behind them, the mountain held its secrets close, but Sarah knew this was far from over. The helicopter's rotors cut through the dawn air as Marcus watched the compound shrink below them. Smoke still rose from the collapsed sections where Kai's final safeguards had triggered, burying the stolen technology under tons of rock and twisted metal. In the seat beside him, Dr. Sarah Chen clutched a small metal device, the only piece of Kai's work they'd managed to save. "The water purification prototype," she murmured, turning it over in her hands. "This alone could help millions." Kai pressed his face to the window, watching the mountains recede. At 16, he looked older now, marked by everything he'd endured. "My father always said the best inventions were the simple ones, the ones that helped people survive." Agent Torres, piloting the aircraft, spoke through the headset. "Extraction team reports 11 consortium operatives captured. The rest scattered when their leadership went down with the facility." He paused. "We found Dr. Elias Thorne in the wreckage. He didn't make it out." Kai's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Marcus saw the conflict in the boy's eyes, relief and grief warring with each other. Thorne had been his captor, his tormentor, but also the only connection to his father's final years. "There's something else," Torres continued. "Before the facility went dark, our cyber team intercepted fragments of transmitted data. The consortium was in contact with other cells, possibly international." "This isn't over." Sarah looked up sharply. "How much did they learn about Kai's work?" "Unknown. But they had him for 3 weeks. Even with his resistance, they could have extracted enough to—" They got fragments, Kai interrupted quietly. Pieces of the solar collection arrays, some of the material synthesis. But the core principles, the real breakthroughs. He touched his temple. Those are still here. Marcus felt a chill despite the helicopter's heating system. Meaning? Meaning they'll keep looking for me, or for others like me. Kai turned from the window. My father wasn't the only one working on these projects back then. There were others in the research group, other families who went into hiding when everything fell apart. The helicopter banked toward the small airstrip where federal agents waited with vehicles and safe houses and promises of protection. Marcus thought about everything that had brought them to this moment. Finding Kai in that cave, the wonder of his underground sanctuary, the desperate flight through the mountains as armed men closed in. It felt like a lifetime ago, though barely a week had passed. What happens now? Marcus asked. Torres adjusted their descent. Witness protection, most likely. New identities, relocation. The boys too valuable to leave exposed. No. Kai's voice was firm. I won't hide anymore. I won't let my father's work die in some government vault while people suffer from problems I know how to solve. Sarah leaned forward. Kai, be realistic. The consortium nearly killed you to get this technology. There could be others. Then we make sure the technology gets to the people who need it before they can stop us. Kai pulled out a small notebook, pages covered with equations and diagrams. I've been thinking about this since we escaped. Small releases, carefully controlled, work with universities, humanitarian organizations, make it impossible to suppress because it's already out there, helping people. Marcus studied the boy's determined expression and saw echoes of his father. The same brilliant mind, but tempered by hard experience. That's incredibly dangerous. You'd be painting a target on yourself. The target's already there. It always will be, as long as this knowledge exists only in my head. Kai closed the notebook. But if it's shared, if other people understand the principles and can build on them, he shrugged, then I become less important, just one of many. The helicopter touched down with a gentle bump. Through the windows, Marcus saw black SUVs waiting, agents in dark suits, the whole apparatus of federal protection. Safety, but also a kind of prison. Torres powered down the engines. End of the line, folks. The debriefing team will want to speak with all of you. As they prepared to disembark, Sarah pressed the water purification device into Kai's hands. Your choice, she said simply. But whatever you decide, you won't be doing it alone. Marcus nodded agreement. Those people in the suits might think they're taking charge now, but they don't understand what we've seen, what you're capable of. He smiled grimly. And sometimes it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. Kai looked down at the device, then at the faces of the two people who'd risked everything to save him. For the first time since they'd found him in that cave, he smiled, really smiled, with hope instead of wariness. My father used to say that the most important discoveries happen in the margins, in the spaces between what people think is possible. He tucked the device into his jacket. I think it's time to find those spaces. The helicopter door slid open, and together they stepped into the uncertain future.